Many people of this fandom's community thread the internet halls of infamy. We have as prime examples One-Nighted Flampus for its unique mechanics and overall great game, but odd developer to say the least. We have the Return to Freddy's, often recognized and mocked by the other users for its stolen assets, plagiarism, confusing mechanism, weird characters, and more. However, all of this was created by a developer who was young at the time, then, as the time went by itself, grew up and learned from his mistakes to improve and make better projects. But what happens when both the game and creator are infamous for the reasons? Dormitabis is a Five Nights at Freddy's fan game released back in 2018 that begs the question, what happens when a person's fantasies take over the work of a team full of determined people? Well, the result is a strange gameplay experience full of hidden stories that leave people confused and mad for many reasons. The question looking at its current state is, why? How could such a popular game, that was so supported back then on the website it was first announced on, reach more than 10,000 downloads within a month? Heck, even formed websites for it, got played by several famous YouTubers, and even had fanarts made for it, reach a point where now, if you search on any platform, what's the worst Five Nights at Freddy's fan game? This game appears first? How come now there are thousands of videos explaining the situation, and almost everybody who's a part of this community won't even try touching it with a 10-foot pole? Not even verbally? Well, it's time to find out the reason why and answer all of those questions by simply playing it and diving into the whole situation itself. Buckle up, viewers, because I'm sure this is going to be a long video.
Jesus Christ! That is huge! That is absolute huge!
As I previously stated, Dormitabis is a Five Nights at Freddy's fan game released back in 2018. Its original concept, Dormitabis Beta, was first announced on Game Jolt by the same creator Nishi, or also known as Blackout, and revealed in the late 2015. This version was even inspired by the fifth game in the Return to Freddy's series. This was supposed to be a free roam experience that, instead of forcing players to sit in an office for a couple of minutes, would let them explore a building, or in this case, some kind of purgatory, to find keys and complete minigames in order to escape. This concept was later cancelled and disappeared right at the start of the new year in January 2016, and it got replaced by a sit and survive style, inspired by the classic FNAF mechanics, but with extremely high difficulty and more added features to make the gameplay as different as possible. Now, not so many people talk or even know much about the original version. In fact, many consider it lost media due to the lack of footage and evidence that it ever existed in the first place. Luckily, there is one video on YouTube that proves Dormitabis Beta was actually real. As we can see from the clip, it changed a lot compared to what we eventually got. And I don't know if I should be happy or sad, because both give me the same unsettling vibes. Anyway, at the time, because the fandom was smaller than it is now, Dormitabis got a lot of attention and support even before its release. Many people were excited by Nish's announcements, despite the game's sudden changes in direction, and stayed supportive of whatever was going to happen next. To put it more simply, the game, probably because of the unexpected audience and the countless ideas behind it, brought a lot of excitement but also stress for the people working on it. It ended up in what most would call development hell for 3 years straight. At least it was finished after all. When the game was finally done and the download link was finally available on the creator's official Game Jolt page, that's when everything started. Once you actually launch the game, you're thrown straight into its world. It starts with a cinematic prologue. The screen shows a dark security office where there is... well, it appears to be some kind of corporate puppet figure. It looks like a disfigured man, completely purple from head to toe, just sitting there and staring down at the table. I genuinely can't tell what even he's looking at. Maybe it's a piece of paper he's holding, if it's even that, or maybe he's staring at a knife. Seriously, what is going on with these graphics? Anyway, we stand for a few seconds with the image unchanged while an oddly remixed music box melody that I like for some reason plays in the background. Then it suddenly turns black before the title screen finally appears. You know, when I first played this game, I honestly couldn't tell if this was a part of the actual storyline or just some kind of an Easter egg, because I didn't understand much of it, which, I mean, is kind of a good thing, right?
found you. If not, I'm probably just wasting my time with this call, but it's worth a try. So, your name's John?
Yeah, I'm not going to go into all that. So, at first we find ourselves in a rather strange looking place, and as soon as we reach our office, a phone guy named Peter calls us to greet us and tell us three important things. First, he tells us that our name is John, and that we are located in a purgatory. After that, he explains the current state of our childhood friends who were killed back in the 80s. It's extremely complicated. So, their spirits have been brought back in the form of animatronics, some kind of twisted entities, whose appearance are bizarre due to a failure by one of the pizzeria's engineers. And now they wander in the same place we are in. Then he tells us that we are dead and that our spirit is here because of our imagination and memories which shape this location we are seeing. It's more like we're some kind of ghost that contains something very special, some kind of plasma that our friends, who are now haunting us, want to obtain. Whatever we do, it seems like we shouldn't give it to them or else our spirits will die permanently. Wait. You know, in the game's lore, plasma is seen as a representation of the life force. By extracting it, the animatronics don't just kill you, they also absorb your essence, prolonging your suffering in the cursed place so that your own existence don't disappear as well. And just by saying this, I'm already confused. Do I die or not? Is this some sort of metaphor for replaying the same level after getting jump scared? Who knows, because I sure don't get it. But I know among the story that our phone guy shares, two important things that helped me get out this night. One, there's only one animatronic present for now. His name is Havoc Freddy, and we don't have any doors or anything to protect us from him, so, to not get killed, whenever I hear a cracky floor on the left side of the hall, the only thing we should do is go to the other side and wait for the 10 sound effect to disappear. Easy. Second, from now on, we have to look for tapes every night. That's not a problem because they're highlighted in the background anyway and can be easily identified. However, it is annoying that regardless of the shift's difficulty, we still have to put the effort in searching for them. On night 1, he explains that these tapes are important for progress and that listening to them gives you information about where you are. Which, alright, if you say so. I don't get that point if we already know we are in a purgatory, but I didn't listen to a single one, so I'm not the one to judge. Now I have a few things besides the lore that I would like to talk about. First, this game is clearly inspired by Five Nights at Freddy 3. In fact, during the development of this game, it was actually created between the years when FNAF 3 had just come out and FNAF 4 was about to be made. This explains a lot, especially when you look at the similar graphics. And more specifically, the density of the green color that we can see on the screen with every move. Speaking of that, another thing we can notice is the different mechanics that we have to apply from the beginning of the game. Unlike the classic franchise, the player can actually move, but only between 2 points. And the things we can look at are the office itself, the door on the left, the door on the right, the ceiling for some reason, a window that is behind our office, and on the other side, the door on the left and the door on the right in the distance. Cool. Although the graphics seem bad, I really like them, not in the sense that I'm obsessed with them because they're well made or visually impressive, but more because of the atmosphere and the feeling they create during the gameplay. Instead of a clean or calm night look, this office actually gives the impression that we are in some kind of purgatory, and our main objective is to get out. However, the rooms shown are a bit boring. It doesn't feel like anyone has been here for centuries. There is no dust, no dirty decorations, no destroyed objects, and some areas are even completely empty. That erases what made FNAF 3 so scary and special. My opinion is that giving the player the feeling that they shouldn't be in that place, that something supernatural is happening behind it, something that probably hides a dark story, makes the game much more mysterious and interesting. The only problem now is to see if there's any well-written and interesting lore. Otherwise, I don't really know what to say other than the fact that this is the first and easiest playable night. Huh? It's 6 AM. Why isn't this night finished yet? Because the game fucks with you, that's why. In Dormitabis, you don't finish at 6 AM and at 7 AM. And instead of 5 or 6 nights, you have 13. 13 nights. Oh my god. Night 2 begins, and right after getting into the office and opening the cameras, the phone guy tells us that we are ghosts, and that's the main reason why the animatronics want to kill us so badly. He explains the plasma we possess, repeats the fact that we are dead, blah blah blah. Oh, and also, the second tape can be easily found at the bottom of the screen from Game 2. There are some important things we need to know and understand. First, now there are true animatronics we have to deal with. Tonight, instead of Havoc Freddy, we face Am I Real, or also named Cake Bear, and Havoc Chica. Am I Real, based on the official description, is the first animatronic built in this place. He's a robot created back in 1989, which now has two sides. First, he looks like an uncanny bear with no ears, holding a normal cupcake in his left hand. And second, going back to how this game was inspired by Five Nights at Freddy's 3, there's this green, distorted version of him that looks very similar to Springtrap, with the cake now appearing more like a mutant. His mechanics compared to the others who haunt us by wandering through the Purgatory's room are different. What we should do in order for Cake Bear to not kill us is, whenever he says the number of a room, we quickly switch to that camera and stare at him until his distorted version turns back to normal. Havoc Chica, on the other hand, is this disfigured Chica robot, and her design is actually one I like. Her sound cue, once she reaches the right door, is a cracky floor sound and a girl's laugh. The moment you hear it, you have to rush to the other side and stare at her until she fades away. I'm not kidding, she literally fades away. And then you have to return as fast as you can, or else the cupcake she's holding will kill you. You know, this game really loves jumpscares that include cupcakes. I don't really have much to say about this night, except that Dormitabis has a pretty big problem with the GUI. The camera buttons and the effects work as they should, but unlike other normal games where the button you have to press appears in the right corner of the screen, here it's a panel and basically covers the entire screen, which means you constantly have to close it, open it, or, if you don't like that idea, just shove it aside as quickly as possible so you can actually see what's going on. Even if it seems like a small thing, these mechanics are actually very important for gameplay to run smoothly, especially when dealing with animatronics like Cake Bear, where the cameras are the only way to protect yourself. Alright, so night 3 is a bit better. Havoc Freddy returns along with Cake Bear, and we also get a new guest that the phone guy tells us about, Soul Cage. Who is Soul Cage, you might ask? Well... see? This is its design. I swear, they look much better when their legs aren't visible on the camera. Anyway, as Peter said, Soul Cage's mechanics are pretty simple, similar to Havoc Chica's actually. It appears at the right door, but instead of having to run under the table, all we have to do is endure a mini jumpscare, which almost made me shit my pants the first time I saw it, and then play dead by staring at it.
It looks like something straight out of a goddamn horror attraction, to be honest. Anyway, once it's assembled all of the parts, it is going to appear on your ceiling. I think the best way to just keep it away is to look at it when it's up there, so make sure to do that. It dislikes being watched.
Oh, and we also have Havoc Bonnie, which looks very similar to Shadow Bonnie from FNAF 2 Easter Egg. I sure wonder who designed this. Yeah, anyway, he appears near your monitor, but you're not supposed to react to that. The only thing you have to do is look up at the ceiling when the screen starts glitching into this weird blue visual. Otherwise, he won't disappear. I won't talk further about it because it's pretty boring, plus it rarely appears and the design sucks ass. There's nothing really new tonight, except for the fact that the animatronics seem to be more active, and for the first time, the phone guy actually gives us some lore about the personalities of the robots that appear. Ironic how the rushed calls end up being better. Oh, and also the third tape is located around Game 9. exactly where Soul Cage appears the most. Two things I would like to say about this night are: first, the design of Soul Cage is horrible, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way toward the artists, I just find it unbearable to look at. Not because it's creepy, but it just looks bad. I get that it's inspired by something from Five Nights at Freddy's 3, but I hate it when fangame developers assume that sharp equals scary. It doesn't. If anything, it just makes the characters look more edgy than they should be. It feels exaggerated. Then there's the lack of animations in this game. Aside from the goofy movements we've seen in the extra menu during actual gameplay that are barely any animation, you mostly notice it in jumpscares and close-ups, which is honestly disappointing. The fact that these animatronics don't have a proper movement really hurts the experience. For example, when you look at them to make them go away, instead of slowly retreating into the darkness to make the moment more tense and intimidating, the screen just fades to black for 2 seconds and then they're gone. I don't know, it just feels like wasted potential for a FNAF game that doesn't rely on doors. Night 4, 4 challenges. Now Havoc Chica, Havoc Freddy and Cake Bear make a comeback to beat me down, along with a new enemy called Havoc Puppet. Here it is. Just look at it. It's not... Doesn't it look like an onion stuck on sticks? Seriously, what's up with these designs? The concept of making a puppet with tentacle-like features is actually unique. But just look at how it's executed. It doesn't feel like it belongs in a horror game set in Five Nights at Freddy's universe. According to its official description, it says, "The mind behind all failed experiments. When alive, this kid's name was..." Okay... I guess Havoc Puppet is supposed to be the main antagonist of this game. The one responsible for all the bizarre animatronics that are haunting me now. In a way, it makes sense. Now that I think about it, and now that I think what the phone guy said earlier, I can kind of connect the dots. That would probably explain why he's also a puppet. However, it's weird to view him as the main antagonist, because dealing with Havoc Puppet is actually very easy. All you have to do is, as soon as you hear a music box playing in the background, turn around, face the window, and just like Soul Cage, wait until the screen fades to black for a few seconds and he disappears.
And I'm pretty sure if I don't cover myself, he's not gonna allow me to ever send you any message again.
In fact, the music Havoc Puppet plays is the same as the one we heard in the game's intro.
Coincidence? I think not!
On the other hand, even though we are dealing with more animatronics, and the new threat can be dangerous in moments where you have to rush to the other side, it's not such a bad night. It's a good thing this marionette doesn't instantly kill you if you don't react within a second, because it's really active tonight. Actually, talking about this puppet makes me a little sad, because it feels like wasted potential. I mean it. A functional animatronic with tentacles sounds genuinely intimidating, and there could have been so many creative ways to introduce it. Whether through its positioning in different rooms, unique animations showing how it moves, or even small subtle gestures, something really interesting could have come out of this concept. Instead, we ended up with this. Potential. But if this is the real antagonist, then the game is going to be boring. Oh, and the forte can be found in Cam 1. Okay, so Havoc Puppet, which we've talked about a lot, Cake Bear and Soul Cage are back, with Cake Bear being the most active out of all of them. We also get two new guests this time whose mechanics apparently work together, Havoc Foxy and Golden Bear. And also the fifth tape can be found in Cam 3. Havoc Fox is this distorted fox, who, from what Twitter tells us, who only appears in room 4. Like Foxy from Five Nights at Freddy's, he hides behind a curtain, but he doesn't attack directly, at least not at first. To slow him down, you have to check his camera as often and as much as possible. Golden Freddy, whose design I actually like, although he looks a bit strange in some rooms, is, as the name suggests, a bear with visible organs inside. You can also see that he has a phone attached to his head. Like a Myriel, he only appears in rooms before attacking and never actually shows up directly next to the player until you're already in danger. Now things go like this. When they attack, Golden Freddy first sends you a notification asking you to enter a password. To do that, you go to camera 5, where Havoc Foxy shows you a tablet with either a random sentence or numbers written on it. If it's a sentence, you have to type the longest word. Caps matter, by the way. If it's a number, then you just type it exactly. Then you rush to the other side and look at the left door from a distance to watch Havoc Foxy until he disappears.
Yourself and your friends, and him as well. These obviously aren't real recordings, but instead memories of your messed up childhood compressed into physical form. My idea is that collecting all these may allow you and your friends to move on from purgatory and become free ghosts. Basically, facing your past would make you get over it, make you find your peace. For your sake, find all of them. Talk to you later.
If you rush to the other side without entering the code, then Golden Bear appears and instantly kills you. It's actually a pretty interesting mechanic, and Dormitabis finally shows what these animatronics are capable of. Their teamwork really sells the idea that they're actively trying to kill the player, and it makes the atmosphere feel more threatening, especially combined with the increased activity of all the other animatronics. But, like every night, there are problems. First, you have to constantly keep an eye not only on Havoc Fox's camera, but also on King Bear. I wouldn't complain if they weren't so inconsistent. Like, no matter how much you check Havoc Foxy, sometimes he moved just as fast as if you hadn't looked at him at all. It makes the gameplay more frustrating and really hides like the sudden rise of difficulty. Havoc Puppet and Soul Cage aren't that big of a deal because of their clear sound cues, but the rest are honestly a pain to deal with. Second, the tutorial itself. Seriously, when I first read the instructions on how to survive Golden Freddy and Havoc Foxy, I barely understood anything. The wording is really bad and unclear. I actually had to close the game and look it up online. And even a fan wiki explained it better than the game itself. That says a lot. Strap in, guys, this is all kinds of fucked up. It seems that Havoc Foxy and Golden Bear are no longer here tonight, despite me checking 1,000 of times for them. Instead, we face Havoc Freddy, Havoc Chica, Molten Evil, of course Cake Bear, and you guessed it, another brand new animatronic named BOA, which stands for Box of Abominations. Wow. Just wow. Before I comment on it, I have to mention something the phone guy tells us. He talks about the importance of collecting tapes, suggesting that they contain lost memories or hidden truths about your character's past and what really happened in this location. He indirectly mentions that without them, we are stuck in an endless cycle, and me hearing this while collecting the 7th tape from Camp 4 is like, what the fuck is that supposed to mean? Does this mean if we don't collect all these tapes across all these 30 nights, we can't get a good ending? Nah, it can't be. I refuse to believe a game that looks this complex would include such a frustrating requirement. Right? Anyway, back to Box of Abominations, or BOA. It's an animatronic whose design is inspired by the box we can find in the office at FNAF 3. It actually looks pretty intimidating and cool, until you look at its legs. Its mechanics are pretty simple, but considering how active the animatronics are during this night, it becomes very time consuming. Similar to Havoc Chica, BOA appears at the right door. All you have to do is run to the other side and watch it from a distance. But here's the catch. Since the animatronics is made up of multiple heads, you have to wait for every single one of them to retreat before it finally disappears. And when I say it wastes time, I mean it. This This night was honestly a nightmare to play, with Cake Bear constantly talking about the rooms he just entered since night 5, Havoc Fred and Havoc Chica attacking from both sides, and even Molten Bonnie showing up near the end just to make everything more crazy. It turns the whole experience into pure frustration. Not to mention that BOA's animation is so long that it sometimes just stops and disappears visually, even though the game still treats it as if it is there, which sucks and ruins the entire experience. Dear viewers, as we keep going from here, you'll soon start to realize it's just not your skill issue. Or okay, maybe a little bit. But it's also the unbearable AI in this game, and the absolute terrible glitches that come with it. Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, it did. This night, just like in the last one, brings back 5 animatronics. That's right, no new guests, which thank goodness by the way. Here, Cake Bear, Soul Cage, Havoc Foxy, Molten Bonnie and Golden Bear all return, and their comeback is the same, because the more you face them, the more you realize this game is less about skill and more about luck. There were countless times when the Shadow Bonnie ripoff showed up at the worst possible times, and Cake Bear was constantly terrorizing me. I'm not even exaggerating, he literally spammed the rooms he teleported to. To mention the phone guy's call, which is probably one of the most boring things in the entire game. All he does is literally tell you at the beginning that the animatronics are behaving differently compared to the previous years, like they're trying to make him look like a liar or weird. Which, okay, and who cares? He also reminds us, again, to collect all the tapes, which I already had picked up from Game 8. And then he just fucks off. 10 out of 10 storytelling right here. But back to the actual gameplay. The animatronics this night are, at times, unbearable. You need both skill and luck, and that combination just makes everything feel unfair. A lot of this comes down to how you manage your time on the cameras, because at this point you're basically stuck between two problems. If you decide to stay on Havoc Fox's camera and focus on slowing him down, Cake Bear will keep calling out rooms and rushing towards your office, ready to kill you instantly. If you focus only on Cake Bear, not only do you sometimes not have enough time to turn him back to normal, but the notification shows up faster, meaning you have to enter the code. And to do that, you need to go to Fox's camera, which is already dangerous, then rush to the other side to deal with him. All while there's a pretty high chance that the moment you come back, Soul Gage kills you, or Cake Bear spawns again and ends you with his cupcake, or Molten Bonnie jumpscares you. Also, if you have a weaker laptop, there's a pretty high chance that the game just crashes, especially when Havoc Fox enters your office. Now, I get it. Difficulty is supposed to increase as you progress, but this just feels exaggerated. The mechanics of these animatronics are so different and demanding that the experience becomes intense in a bad way, more frustrating than scary. Again, I don't really have much else to say except ramble and complain about how over the top their behavior is. Because the lore, if you can even call it that Peter gives us is a burger full of nothing. So yeah, let's just move on to the next night. If I said night 8 was better than the previous ones, then of course I would be lying. Now there are 6 animatronics present, who, guess what, all have extremely different mechanics that makes the game even more unbalanced. We have our old pal Havoc Freddy, Havoc Chica, BOA, Cake Bear, Havoc Foxy, and Golden Freddy. Now friend, if you're watching this thinking this is some kind of tutorial, then good luck, you're on your own. I have a lot of questions about what's going on here, and of course I'll start with the one who almost made me break my keyboard, the phone guy. Because for some reason, this night, this man just won't shut up. There are so many moments where I'm trying to deal with incoming animatronics while also being forced to listen to him talking in the background. So instead of struggling any longer, especially since I didn't really care about what he was saying anyway, I decided to hang up. And he hangs. Literally. Just take a look at this.
Really important news.
I'm sorry if my complicated life is an inconvenience to your perfect existence.
Cindy.
Aside just because someone hung up on them. Not to mention that the game punishes you for something you've never intended to do in the worst possible way. Guess what? Every single sound cue during gameplay, and I mean everything, gets muted until you die. Which... I don't even know why this scene exists in the first place. If it was meant to make us empathize with Peter, then it completely failed. If anything, it just made me dislike him even more. So yeah, it looks like I'm forced to put up with his annoying voice and his hyperactive animatronics. Great! During this night, you have to constantly focus on both sides, and all the things that annoyed me before are back, but much worse. Cake Bear and Havoc Foxy are twice as aggressive, and there's much higher chance for the game to crash. Not just because of a weaker laptop, but because the game itself is horribly optimized. Just imagine every animatronics mechanic being twice as fast. That's Night 8, combined with the phone guy talking non-stop. At some point, maybe because I was so focused on surviving, Peter's voice acting became incredibly annoying. It made me so uninterested in the lore that I had to look it up in a fan wiki just to understand what he was saying. From what I found, Peter has now discovered the second key to the freedom puzzle of his, something tied to some sort of personal trauma. He also notices during his journey that an entity, who's much larger and more aggressive than Amariel, is disturbing the spirits with heavy footsteps. Fearing that this creature is a serious threat, Peter decides to investigate it before the next night. Wishes us luck, reminds to collect the tapes, which I did from night 5, and then he finally hangs up, after more than a full minute of talking. And honestly, I hope he gets killed. Here's how many animatronics return and are active tonight. Havoc Foxy, Golden Bear, Cake Bear, Havoc Bunny, Soul Cage, and Havoc Puppet. Hearing myself complain about the balance of this gameplay is the same as listening to the phone guy constantly talking about how we need to collect all the tapes. It's repetitive, but necessarily. Except for this night, when it comes to the lore, everything seems different. Peter actually talks about what he saw the previous night, and the entity he was talking about earlier is a massive creature named Garvey. Garvey is, according to the game, the most dangerous animatronic in the entire experience. The phone guy tells us the horrific things he witnessed, saying that it tore apart each animatronic spirits into tiny little pieces. Then he says something I couldn't agree more with.
Stupid motherfucker. I am such a stupid motherfucker!
For some reason, the game expects me to already know who Garvey is, even though this is the first time I have ever heard the name throughout all these 9 nights. I'm guessing I'm supposed to listen to collect tapes to understand the lore, because otherwise none of this makes any sense. Anyway, Peter probably ends his last call by saying that he hid behind Havoc Fox's curtain in desperation so the creature wouldn't find him. Honestly, compared to the rest of the calls, this one actually stands out. Oh, and also, 3 fun facts. I just checked the fan wiki because the game doesn't tell me shit, and did you know that in this game, my real full name is John Wright? Do you know what that means? Well, the caller is called Peter Wright, which means that Peter is our brother. Do you know what the giant dangerous entity's name is? Of course you don't. It's Garvey Wright, which means Garvey is also our brother. Garvey is the eldest, Peter is the middle child, and we are the youngest one. Isn't that cool? So, you tell me that all this time the game revolved around some sibling conflict, which at least to me actually makes the lore feel more interesting. The fact that Garvey's after us, destroying everything around him just to reach us, really makes the atmosphere heat up and become more intense toward the end. Plus, Peter's messages start to get more interesting. Honestly, imagine how cool it would have been if the game had introduced Garvey a few nights earlier as a missing person, so his story could slowly unfold throughout the game. We could have had more build-up, more storytelling, more character development, more actual plot progression, but sadly that wasn't the case. For some reason I'm actually intrigued to meet Garvey and see how he looks like. Lord have mercy, because this night destroyed me in so many ways I can't even describe. This is Garvey. The enormous entity that Peter was talking about. Looking at this design, you can only say one thing. I'm fucked. And also, it's very clear that this animatronic was inspired by the main antagonist, Springtrap, from Five Nights at Freddy's 3. I'm not kidding, it looks very similar to him. But he walks on all fours, his body is more exposed through the suit, and his eyes are constantly twitching. Overall though, the design is actually pretty cool. And Night 10, you can't even call it Night 10. It's more like Garvey's Night, because he's the only one and final animatronic you face here. It's basically a boss fight, but with some of the worst sound cues and voice acting possible. If you thought that the game was already extreme, just wait until you deal with the glitches. Your monitor bugs out constantly, the screen fades to black at random times, and of course, always at the worst possible times. So, how do you deal with Garvey? Well, it's simple, right? Each time the moment you hear laughter echoing from one side of the office, you stare directly at that side. Now, when it comes to switching sides, things get more complicated. On the main table, in the right corner of the monitor, there's now a black button labeled Toggle Vents that finally becomes useful. At certain moments, Garvey will rush at insane speed towards one side, heading straight to your door to kill you instantly. What you have to do is, before moving, click on the vent he's running through, which is marked by a red arrow, then run as fast as you can to the other side and look into the corresponding vent. But be careful, the vent system is inverted, so if you guess the wrong side, you're dead instantly. And that's how you deal with him. Easy. Yeah, that's what I would have said if I hadn't recorded over 13 attempts of trying to beat this night. The timing in this night is brutal. If you even dare to move your camera away from a single second from where Garvey is, he kills you instantly. And when you switch sides, if you either forget to press the correct vent or look in the right direction, he pauses for a split second and then charges straight at you and slaughters you. And it doesn't matter if you're a speedrunner or not, you'll still run into issues that come purely from the game itself. From what it looks like, the one guy is gone. And now we're stuck with Garvey's terrible voice acting, which isn't even scary, just annoying. He talks through most of the nights, and the worst part is that his constant screaming overlaps important sound cues you actually need to survive.
We will both survive. We will come back. Just let me in. You are this monster. You made me.
I think one of the biggest problems with this game is the fact that developers don't know when to introduce character voice lines. A lot of the dialogue just goes unheard, not because I'm not interested, but because I'm way too focused on surviving and, not dying. And of course, the animation bugs are still here, so are the sound issues. There are moments, especially when switching sides, where Garvey just disappears while you're looking at him, or his animation glitches so badly that it crashes the game. And the audio, the most important sound cues have errors that almost made me lose multiple times. Honestly, I was more afraid of losing because of those issues than because of Garvey himself. Since we've talked about him so much, let's go over what Garvey is actually saying, with the help of FanWiki of course. So, Garvey starts off by threatening me, calling me a traitor who sentenced him to death. Which, okay, what did I even do? Then he mentions that I burned him, and after the incident where he killed children by stuffing them into the animatronic suits, he somehow becomes stronger and desperately demands me to be left inside to survive. He goes on to say that he is eternal, too important to die like this, boasting about the bloody legacy he left behind, promising to finish what the company has started. Until he realizes his trying and hard-looking tough speech doesn't work on you, he completely loses it, demanding you to give your heart to him, warning that if he dies, if he goes to hell, he'll drag you down with him.
I won't die. If I
at the end he refuses to accept that entirely, insisting that no one can stop him, finishing everything with a hysterical laugh which... And that was Dormitabis. There are many extras in this game. Characters, jump scares, unused content, tutorial, but the one that stands out the most for its infamy are the tips. And now I would like to summarize each one so we can understand the story that Garvey is hiding better. Of course, this way of presenting the lore feels pretty lazy, because it is. I mean, what were those calls even for? In fact, it's one of the most boring ways to deliver a story to the player instead of actually showing it visually. But, oh well. Before getting into any summary, just listen to Garvey's voice for a second.
It's a shame. Such a shame. I didn't really want to do this. I didn't want to start doing this again. But they just won't shut up about it. It's not my fault. I can't control my physical mutations. It's not like anyone ever cared for the truth. All they ever wanted was to harm me. But this will be the end. And not without consequences. I'm going to be recording the most important parts of my plans here. As a reminder for myself.
Like in the last night, the voice acting isn't good and often comes off as way too edgy for what's actually happening. Garvey doesn't actually sound like a mentally unstable man, but more like a teenager crying online for attention. There are so many issues I could go into, but there are so many that I'm not even sure they would fit in a single video. Before I start the summary, I'll briefly explain who Garvey is and how he got to this point. Garvey, or Garvey Wright, is the older brother of Peter and John. He was born with a rare condition that gave his skin a purple hue, which is the main reason why the kids who came to the pizzeria nicknamed him Purple Guy. I wonder who that could be. And because of that, he was constantly bullied. This cycle of harassment, along with the humiliation he experienced even at his family's workplace, made him grow to hate the innocence of children, and eventually it pushed him to commit all sorts of crimes, like murdering children and adults for just getting laughed at. Yeah. In the first step, from what you've heard, Garvey decides that from now on he will record every important thing he wants to say, like a reminder to himself. He starts by complaining about how kids treat him because of his mutation, saying that none of his will go without consequences. Then, in the second tape, Garvey confesses his first crime. He kidnaps the first child, tortures him into his basement, and then dumps the body behind the pizzeria's garbage. And he's completely satisfied, even proud, knowing that the victim's friends have no idea what happened, and that will eventually share the same fate. Yeah, great. In the third tape, for some inexplicable reason, the game takes a really dark and uncomfortable turn. He labels the next victim in a way that just feels completely out of place.
Oh my god! This is most certainly beginning to be fun. There's this hot 15-year-old that was part of the kid's friends group. You know, it was fun. She screamed, but nobody heard her. It was so much fun. She's in one of the suits now. Just a little more time until Fredbear's is going down as well.
I genuinely couldn't believe what I was hearing. I know this might sound sensitive, but between the wording and the implications, it raises some really questionable decisions from the developers. Like, why do you include something like that in a Five Nights at Freddy's style game? For what reason? We'll get into that. Anyway, in the fourth tape, the story improves a little bit, but it's still awkward. He starts off with this first evil laugh that honestly just gave me second-hand embarrassment, and then talks about how he manipulated a teenager into committing a crime for just $5. In case you didn't get it, this is actually a reference to Five Nights at Freddy's 4, where, if you know, you know, Michael often causes events that with Fredbear. Very original. In the fifth tape, Garvey says he lured 5 kids into a soundproof room in the pizzeria. He killed them with a knife and then hid their bodies inside the animatronic suits. He's proud of the fact that even after years of doing this, he still hadn't been caught, and that no one suspects him yet. In the sixth tape, despite customers complaining about the strange smell in the pizzeria, the staff still can't figure out where it's coming from. And Garvey, he's actually excited by that, thinking of the reaction once they find the children. But eventually someone starts getting close. In 7th tape, Garvey is clearly frustrated at the fact that a man began investigating the place. At that point, the guy hasn't found anything yet, but Garvey already sees him as a future problem. Well, eventually the man gets the hang of it, cause in the 8th tape, that same man discovers the bodies. Garvey panics, knocks him out as fast as possible, and stuffs his body into Cake's bear suit. He shares the moment's satisfaction, knowing that when the man wakes up, the spring-lock suit inside will activate and kill him instantly. And just like that, we get the origin of Am I Real? From that point, Garvey sets his sight on John, which is us. In the next tape though, we jump forward 11 years. Now Garvey is facing a completely different problem. Peter, one of his younger brothers, knows the truth, and the police are starting to get suspicious because of him. Garvey realizes that if he doesn't act, he might end up in prison for the rest of his life, even though he claims he doesn't want to kill a family member, which is ironic considering everything else he's done. He still prepares himself to do it. And in the final tape, he actually goes through with it. Garvey kills Peter and stuffs him into the yellow bear suit. But even then, there's still a problem left. His youngest brother, who also knows everything, John. And no matter where he is or how far he has to go, Garvey makes it clear that he won't stop until he finds him and finishes the job. From all of this, we can already say that the lore is weak. Compared to the man he was clearly inspired by, William Afton, it completely removes the mystery and intrigue that made the original story so engaging. William Afton is also a serial killer in the original Five Nights at Freddy's series, but he has multiple reasons for his actions. You have things like the death of his youngest son after an incident involving animatronics, the pressure and stress coming from his company, and his rivalry with Harry and others over time. All of that builds up and slowly drives him into madness, to the point where, even if he commits the most horrific acts imaginable, he doesn't feel guilt anymore, only satisfaction because due to the mental state he's in. That's a better lore. That's at least a believable story. But in Dormitabis, Garvey doesn't present any of that. There's no major personal loss, no complex trauma, no deep lore explored past. It just jumps straight into the spite of towards kids just because he was bullied. By children, who aren't even close his age. There's no major personal loss, no complex trauma, no deeply explored past. He just jumps straight into the spite toward kids because he was bullied. By children who aren't even close his fucking age. These are kids going to the pizzeria, by the way, and he's butthurt because he got harassed by them instead of just kicking them out. And his unusual skin pigmentation being the main reason behind everything he does, that's supposed to justify all of this? Give me a fucking break. Dormitabis is a game, unique, but filled with problems coming from both its gameplay and its story to the point I didn't even force myself to complete a good ending. Its infamy is often talked about because of how much it disappointed people at the time. Most of them were even waiting 3 years for it. After going through 11 nights, you're left with the realization that Garv is one of the worst written antagonists out there, reduced to just a psycho committing horrible crimes without any real depth or meaningful motivation, which makes everything not feel disturbing, but lazy. And honestly, that's a big reason why the game is so hated online. It strips away what made the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise so impactful in the first place. The tight mechanics, the strategies, the follow discovery of the lore, and the mystery behind why these tragedies happened in the first place. All of that is what made the experience so entertaining. But here, we ended up with something different. A game filled with forgettable characters, questionable designs, repetitive storytelling, overused references, annoying phone calls, bugs, crashes, shitty graphics, unbearable nights, and a lot more. However, there's another reason why Dormitabis is so hated. And that comes from the tapes. Not just because of the embarrassing voice acting, but because of how the main antagonist is portrayed, with Garvey coming across as a pedophile. When it comes to dark themes, especially involving children, most games handle them carefully, keeping things as safe and respectful as possible. But here, the game crosses every line. It introduces elements, scenes, visuals that feel unnecessarily uncomfortable and completely out of place for this kind of experience. Due to how out of place and random the 15-year-old scene part was compared to the rest of the lore, many interpreted this to be some sort of a shock value. Right? Blackout, otherwise referred to as Nishi, Nicholas G. Kaneberg, or La Blackout. You know what, I'm not going to list all of them because this person had a lot of names throughout their online career. I'll just call them Blackout or Nishi. Anyway, Blackout is a former game developer who was part of the Five Nights at Freddy's community. From that time on, he made all sorts of Five Nights at Freddy's fan games such as One Fucking Nights at Flampy's, his second infamous game Insanity, 0 Hour, and more. Regardless of how many projects he made, his internet persona was defined by a single video game which he developed along with his team for 3 years straight. After going through development hell, it became Dormitabis. Nishi actually helped with several aspects such as writing, character design, modeling, and more. Ironic how exactly those are the problems of the game. Although at first the game seemed simple due to the lack of spoilers and announcements regarding its release, many people on GameJolt were supportive of his work. As soon as the donor link for Dormitabis was released, fans went crazy. Nishi began to gain success and gratitude from many members of the FNAF community. From there, he prepared to work on a sequel called Dormitabis 2. Until 2020 happened. You see, from the beginning of his career, Blackout was surrounded by drama and serious accusations. Immediately after the game's release and the creation of a Discord server for fans to communicate, things got worse. In that year, Blackout was exposed for disturbing behavior and for messaging a 12-year-old. There were many messages and unhinged conversations for roleplays between them that actually got exposed. Additionally, the developer was accused of sending them a picture with their bare ass, which, needless to say, caused everyone who was in contact with him to completely cut ties. Because of this, he fled the FNAF community and hasn't said much since. Aside from a profile description on his GameJolt page saying, "Jesus Christ, just leave me be. I don't want to live in your heads rent-free. I've moved on and you should as well. Bye." Which, yeah, you can have one of those. In short, the game, like its creator, is strange, and considering the list of accusations against Nishi, especially what was mentioned here, Dormitabis is sadly a fetish game regardless of its disturbing content. And unfortunately, that's how it will remain and will be remembered. With a creator that loves his creations just like the people he talks with online. Unfinished.